Welcome to the new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. We are your friendly neighborhood Dakota Boys, Steven.
And Dakota.
And we're excited to come into your ears once again and talk movies. The thing I believe Dakota and I are most excited about at this point is how we are less than 2 weeks away from the official beginning of summer movie season. And what an amazing summer it could be. This could literally be the summer of records. And I have a feeling possibly some heartbreak. There's always at least one heartbreak every summer, if not 12.
Oh, I keep thinking back to the summer when the Green Lantern came out. That was probably, for me, the worst.
That was pretty sad, because it's like, I was one who actually thought Ryan Reynolds was a good idea, and now I feel like an idiot for thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one movie that came out of that whole summer where you actually... That was when the last Pirates of the Caribbean came out, too. And,
yuck. Another disappointment, although we saw that coming.
I think the only movie from that summer that I actually enjoyed was X-Men First Class.
That's right, that would have been First Class summer.
Which, fitting enough, kicked off the movie season of that year. Before
we go any further into today's topic, Dakota, this has to be like one of the week of weeks, however you want to say it, of trailers for upcoming movies. So what was one that stuck out to you in this week of amazing trailers?
Oh, there was honestly just too many to mention, but for me, I can't even hide it. Batman vs. Superman, The Dawn
Shocker.
of Justice. Which kind of actually was supposed to be released today, but thanks to some fumbling people in Portuguese, or whatever country it was.
I don't remember. Yeah, some other country released like a really terrible phone recording version, and then Zack Snyder's like, well, here you go, why don't you watch it in HD? So Batman vs. What was there something in it that made it, or you just been waiting for it, or was there something in the trailer that got you more excited?
Well, it just kind of let you know what was going on in it. I mean, Batman, already cool. In this one, he's kind of, sporting the armor he sports in the classic Batman story, The Dark Knight Returns, where him and Superman fought, and, he's almost sporting a Iron Man-like armor.
Yeah, that one scene, he's kind of got like a metallic, bulky armor on there. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, people were kind of bickering over the way he sounded, but I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, was that was it supposed to be like a voice changer going on there? Is that what that was?
I think who knows? Maybe it was just the suit.
It's one of those neck stickers, like in Mission Impossible 2, where he just put on a little neck sticker and you got like somebody else's voice.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought that was a cool quote. Do you bleed? And then next thing you know, Superman crashes into the concrete, and you know it's on at that point.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting trailer, and that'll definitely be a movie that's one where it's like you want it to be good, but I just hope they're not rushing into this whole building of the Justice League, and that it can work. You know, it's one you want it to work because those are heroes you like. But well, for me, the trailer really caught my fancy this week was Star Wars Force Awakens, probably because it was the only trailer, actually the only trailer so far this year, that I basically had a pulsing shiver going from my spine to my feet nearly the entire trailer. That first real full non-teaser trailer for Star Wars Force Awakens I just thought was great. It had everything you needed to see to be like, this is Star Wars. This is Star Wars. And then, I mean, just having Han and Chewie at the end saying we're home was just kind of like icing on the cake, you know, just to make you like, yes, we are.
So really what you're telling me was everything about Star Wars you're comfortable with.
Everything about Star Wars I'm comfortable with? What are you referring to?
Well, there's a lot of kind of facets of Star Wars. Not trying to get anything weird, but one kind of offshoot of Star Wars that I was always a huge fan of, which had nothing to do with the original movies, was Knights of the Old Republic. It was a video game.
Yeah, I remember that video game. Yep.
But yeah, there's like I'm just saying, you kind of. I have a feeling just because there was TIE fighters and stormtroopers and the X-wings and obviously at the end, Han and Chewie were home.
Yeah, I don't know. The look of it just made me feel like this could be Star Wars, and again, you just are like, actually, that one, sometimes you see a trailer and you kind of have the idea like, please don't suck. You kind of, and that one, I didn't so much feel that as much as like, man, I have a pretty good feeling this is gonna be good. Well, I don't even feel like I need to say please don't suck. But anyway, we better get into our main topic. We got a big whopper today.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a long day.
The one that is kicking off summer this year is Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Da 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 da.
Yeah, this is a big one. And I noticed that Marvel, they love to utilize that first Friday of May for what they hope will be kind of their flagship movie. They like to be the one that starts summer, which can be dangerous because you're setting like a precedent for summer in a way. Like they even start, like the cinematic universe we're in.
Yeah, it's pretty much the kickoff to the big game. I mean, you don't want to start off weak. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like, it's the big kickoff, so there's some pressure for that. But it seems like a lot of times they do set the precedent. Like they've used it for Iron Man, Thor, Avengers, and even before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel is using it for like X-Men 2, Spider-Man. Those all came out right at the beginning of May. Were big movies. Some of those Marvel movies, they were done obviously before this cinematic universe started. But you never know. They could always pull them back into the cinematic universe. I'm still hoping that Dolph Lundgren's Punisher, they do some sort of time travel where Dolph Lundgren can once again be the Punisher in this cinematic universe. I mean, come on, why not?
He actually is, judging by the last Expendables movie, he's actually still in good shape. Maybe he'd show up as the grizzled Punisher who's just been through hell, and he's still alive.
It's those HGHs, man. Those are amazing things for those old guys like Stallone and them. Yeah, I remember... This is a little personal, but Dakota, you remember when you and I watched that in college, and we counted how many deaths there were? I mean, this movie, Dolph Lundgren's Punisher from like 1991, it's like 90 minutes. That's it.
And I think there's 2 deaths per minute?
We figured something like... I know it was at least 1 death per minute, because we got to the end, and there was that one scene where he literally just wipes out the whole... Because we were keeping count, we were up to like... I don't know, we were up to like 70 or something, and then he just plows this whole room where you don't even know how many people were in there. We're like, well, let's just make it an even 100 or something. I mean, there's just a ridiculous death count in that movie, but anyway, to get back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in anticipation of the new Avengers: Age of Ultron, we're going to talk about the movies that were leading up to this one, so it'd be everything kind of what they call Phase 2. We're going to start with Avengers, talk about Iron Man 3, Thor: Dark World, Winter Soldier, kind of how those movies worked, just as our anticipation for this new
just so
big jump.
Just so you get an idea of where these characters were at when we last saw them.
Yeah.
Which makes me kind of wonder if that even plays into this movie.
I don't know.
Like, is Tony Stark still going through post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah, I know, that's the thing, you got him. But yeah, so anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Marvel Movie Hour. So we're going to start it off with the Avengers.
Yeah!
So the Avengers. Dakota, did you see that opening weekend?
Actually, no, I did not. I'm not gonna lie, kinda maybe delayed myself on viewing that movie.
Is there, why are you getting all, like, weird about it? Was there a reason?
Well, I'm more into, as you are aware, DC.
You're definitely a DC guy.
DC, Hero, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Flash. And it just kind of seemed like a lot of hoopla, considering that there's only one hero. At the time, there was only one hero on this entire Avengers roster that I actually cared about.
Who was that?
Iron Man.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
Now, are you like? Is this love for Iron Man? Does this go before Robert Downey Jr. or were you just like, well, I liked the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, and from there it was why you were excited about?
Yeah,
him?
I really like the way he kind of made that character his own, and it was something I don't think we've kind of seen in a hero before in a movie, or he was
It's
like
true.
he was kind of oh, I don't want to do this, but here I am, so I better do it well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was kind of that kind of where he didn't. It's at one point he seemed like he didn't want to do it, but at the same time he's like, "This is awesome" or something. I don't know. I go back to Iron Man being on. God, was it? Is one of those animated shows. It was before he. I mean, he had his own animated show in the '90s, but it was when he was like, Iron Man was on one of them, and I just remember he had this ridiculous mullet and like mustache, and he just didn't look cool at all with that.
Hey man, it was
mullet.
the '90s, okay? That's just how people wore their hair, okay?
It's true. Yeah, and that's the thing with the Avengers. How did you feel about the lineup coming into Avengers? Like all of the lead up coming to this point of this movie.
Actually, I should say one thing. Another reason I was kind of avoiding it, mostly because Edward Norton had backed out, and for those of you who don't know what that was all about, Edward Norton starred in the Hulk movie.
The Incredible Hulk. Not the one we don't speak of from 2003.
But I actually really liked that movie. It was very. It wasn't as big as some of the other Marvel movies, but I really liked it. And
it was a really good standalone Hulk movie. It was.
Yeah, if the old TV show had like money and good special effects,
yes,
that's how it would have been.
And that's the thing, like that. It really had that Bill Bixby TV show feel to. In fact, they even used the theme a little bit in the soundtrack. Yeah, and that was the thing. Everybody was kind of like, I don't know. And then even when they brought on Mark Ruffalo, at first I was like, we'll see. I mean, I guess he's a good actor and stuff. I'll admit it. I went into the Avengers with pants moistened. I was ready. But my thing was I loved Captain America: The First Avenger. I thought, regardless of how people put the first 10 Marvel movies list together, I put First Avenger near the top. I think
really?
That's a really strong movie because I went in knowing Captain America would eventually become the leader, and that movie really set up who he was, his kind of military character that he had in that, and it also just I felt like he was just so human and relatable in a lot of ways, and I loved the idea of it being. I loved the period piece of it with kind of that 40s feel, having Nazis kind of thing going on. It just felt like a really solid movie, and so I was excited for that, and then obviously everybody loves the Hulk on the big screen and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I was ready for it, and I went on opening night, and it was a full crowd. There's a kid in front of me wearing a Thor helmet. And let's first just talk about weaknesses. What did you think were weaknesses in the Avengers film?
Well, there's not really any you could point out. I mean, it kind of starts off uneven, like, okay, where's this going? If you didn't really see any of the other Marvel movies, you'd probably be a little lost, like, oh, who's this scientist guy and what is he doing?
A little bit. You'd definitely be a little bit lost. I thought that it could stand on its own enough just because they gave everyone their own kind of time to shine, and you kind of knew it gave you a way to know them enough.
Yeah, once it gets going, I mean, it jumps into a pretty good movie, but like obviously I knew who Nick Fury was, but it's like, oh, who is this woman that's challenging him and trying to circumvent his authority, and who is this guy with the bow standing in these...
Yeah, some of that SHIELD stuff was definitely like the stuff that you'd definitely be the most lost in, and you could even argue, obviously the villain being Loki and having the Tesseract involved with stuff that goes back to the Thor movie. And so, for me, like, major weakness would have been probably just it. I felt like maybe he did this on purpose, though, but it felt like it was kind of had a really slow build to what ended up being a grand last act. That to me was maybe the biggest weakness, was just that I was like, well, this is taking a little while to build.
I suppose if you looked at it, you could kind of take it as a 3-act play in a way.
Yeah, most good movies that follow like a normal story do kind of have a 3-act to them. You know, you have your kind of beginning, your middle, and your end. You have your beginning, middle, and end. There you go. Do what they do. But really, you know, a lot of stories, they do kind of have that arc to them. You know, and that was the thing with Avengers. I just thought the first act was a little draggy, but then once it started establishing what was going to go on, then it just got better. It got definitely better as it went. And I think a lot of people argue that critics, especially, like, that it doesn't have rewatchability. And I contend that it does have rewatchability. I've rewatched it.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, obviously, you could go, well, yeah, but you like these type of movies. Well, yeah, duh. It's like people would say The Notebook has rewatchability, and I'd say you're an idiot. But it's just because I'm not into The Notebook. You know, I mean, that's the thing. If you like comic book movies, it's going to have rewatchability. If you like romance movies with
if you just
promiscuous people, The Notebook is going to have rewatchability.
I think if you just like action movies in general, this movie...
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a good action movie, too.
Yeah.
Regardless of comic book. I mean, it definitely is nerdy. It was the beginning. Like this Phase 2 we're going to talk about is probably a lot nerdier than what Marvel calls their Phase 1 movies. Everything before Avengers.
Oh, yeah.
Iron Man to Avengers.
Everything after that goes pretty much into the character's backstory in the comics, I believe.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know, they say we're in the age of, if you're a geek, this is the best time to live in terms of you having your stuff being at the forefront of pop culture. Or porp culture. I don't know why I was going to say porp, but porpoise culture. Wait, that sounded like a monkey. That was not a porpoise. That was a monkey. I apologize for that.
You might want to save that for the next Planet of the Apes movie,
sorry,
though.
That was my Tourette. Anyway. Avengers, I mean... Yeah, I mean, I think it did a good job of bringing the team together. You saw the team. It threw me for a loop a little bit, how Captain America didn't really feel like the leader, but it was such an establishment movie, it ended up making sense in the end. And they did give him the scene where when Banner does show up, the Hulk, you know, he's telling everybody where to go. He's like, you and Hawkeye, you go up, you know, we'll take the streaks, Hulk, smash. You know what I mean? He just tells the Hulk to smash. And you do see the beginnings of his leadership, you know, by that time. So...
Well, if you really think about it, he's the only one that probably could lead a team like that, because he's besides Hawkeye and Black Widow, he's the only one that actually has been in any sort of situation that calls for leadership under fire.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Tony, you know, you got Tony Stark, who a lot of people felt like he was almost the leader of the Avengers. Ironically, isn't a team player. You know, everybody thinks of him as a leader, but he's not a team player at all. He's kind of a lone wolf. He doesn't listen to authority very well. Captain America is all about following orders, which is...
Plus, in this movie, he kind of seems like the shoot first, ask questions later.
Who's that?
Tony Stark. I mean, you can't really see him making decisions. It's just like, oh, people are here trying to kill me, let me just shoot them.
Yeah. So, yeah, as far as the Avengers go, we'll just go ahead and lead this into the next movie we're going to talk about. Iron Man 3 is the next movie we're going to talk about. And in Avengers, Iron Man has to fly up and get rid of a nuclear missile that's shot into New York because Nick Fury couldn't stop it from happening. And so Iron Man grabs it and basically throws it up into that
black hole, whatever that was.
Kind of a wormhole thing. And there's, like, probably, 10 seconds where you think Iron Man is dead, for people who are really out of the loop and think they'd actually kill Iron Man right then. It seems like he's going to die, but of course he doesn't. He barely makes it in a certain amount, and then he eats shawarma with the group because he's always wanted to try it, and the near-death experience made him go, dang it, I'm going to eat shawarma. And in Iron Man 3, that's where we kind of start out. He's kind of battling basically a PTSD because of the events in New York City, which in the Marvel world they dub it as the Battle of New York, I believe is what they call it. They call it from then on out. So if you're at a Marvel movie and they say Battle of New York, they're talking about what happened in the Avengers, what Loki did in the Avengers. Iron Man 3, what do you got? Do you have any weaknesses in that movie?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I should point them out. I mean, the whole relationship Tony Stark has with his girlfriend, I think, is probably a weak point.
With Gwyneth Paltrow's character, Pepper Potts?
Yeah. It kind of starts off like you're not really... It kind of starts off on shaky ground anyway, and then it just kind of gets more complicated as it goes along.
Well, I think what threw people off is they went in expecting the first Iron Man, and honestly, if you wanted the first Iron Man, just go watch Iron Man. Because this movie started off with Tony Stark voiceover kind of talking about where he's at, and then it starts with like this 1999 flashback, and you hear a song that nobody wants to hear again. I'm blue, abu dee, abu die. And
I'm not gonna lie, that did kind of transport me back to the 90s.
That was the thing. It was, I guess, technically, it was a good song to pick because I was like, okay, it is 99. I believe it because they're playing Blue and Happy has a mullet. I guess apparently that was big in 99 too. Happy is Tony Stark's bodyguard. For those of you who don't know, of course, this flashback shows how he kind of talks about battling your own demons and how in this incident of New Year's Eve he created one of his demons and what he did. He kind of stood up this guy who wanted to talk to him, and this guy basically held it against Tony Stark all these years. And
yeah, some people just can't let stuff go, man.
Yeah,
I don't know what's up with that.
The thing, I guess, for me, do you have anything else on kind of your weaknesses in the movie?
I'm not sure if I should point it out without giving the movie away. But
it's old enough. You can give it away.
The villain, this Mandarin that everyone was getting psyched for.
If I know where you're going, pretty much everybody knows this twist. It's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan, where everybody knows. So.
I mean, everybody was getting stoked that Ben Kingsley was playing this very, very high-profile villain from the comics. He's pretty much what the Mandarin is to Iron Man, what Lex Luthor is to Superman. I mean, that's the only way to sum it up. And
you'll never see me coming.
And when you get a character like an actor like Ben Kingsley to play, it kind of makes you stop and you're like, okay, maybe this will be pretty good.
Yeah, I know. When I think of terrorist, I think of Gandhi.
Hey, he was trying something new.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that was the thing, a lot of people were excited they were bringing the Mandarin in. And I was excited too. I thought that'd be cool, bringing in the Mandarin and the possibility of the 10 rings and things like that, which is, well, there's different things in the comics of what the 10 rings mean. I won't get into that now because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But what then ended up throwing me for a loop is that there was another villain in the movie that ended up you seeing as more of a villain than
the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. There was a man behind the curtain, so to speak. Well, there was. And so your weakness was just kind of like another weakness in the movie you just thought was kind of that how they handled the Mandarin.
Yeah, and I will completely overlook the fact that this movie kind of seems to have stolen its storyline from The Incredibles.
It did have a lot of similarities to The Incredibles. It did have a lot.
I can overlook that. It's just I think they wasted a good opportunity to play with something that would have been new and unseen.
Yeah, I guess for me, extremis is something he's talking about in the movie. It's what turns the people into like the fireballs that they are in the movie.
Yeah.
And that threw me off too, just because I am familiar with extremis in the comic books, and they weren't just
So PG?
fireball maniacs. And also, it was a pretty violent comic book. And I was like, what in the world? And so that was kind of weird to me. Not that I'm a real comic book purist. I was like, okay, let's just see what they do with this. But there were just certain elements with the villain. And honestly, I'll just say it. This whole Phase 2, after the Avengers movies, these three we're talking about, I all thought they kind of had weak villains.
Yeah, that's...
when we get into Thor Dark World, villain gets lost, and...
To be fair, though, Iron Man never very strong on the villains. I mean, the villain in the first one just came out of left field at the last minute and was like, let's go.
Yeah, but sometimes that's how origin stories go. But Iron Man 2 had more of a villain.
Yeah.
Actually, again, it had kind of two again. I guess it's kind of a thing with Iron Man, I guess. The whole villain thing in this movie is just kind of weird. But I thought overall, at first, I was just kind of shell-shocked by it. But when I look at it, as its own movie, and I see, okay, it's a guy with PTSD who his way of dealing with it is to put all his energy into his work. And you were talking about the relationship with Pepper. That's really, those things are that's the main story of Iron Man 3, is him battling his PTSD and his relationship with Pepper. Because really, the ending that everybody hated made sense to me, because I realized that was the whole point of the movie, how he goes, his Christmas present to Pepper was, blowing up all the suits he had worked on and saying, I love you more. And so, in that aspect, the movie made sense. I guess I could see people's arguments with, this wasn't the greatest comic book movie in the world, but I thought, with the story they decided to do, which is just Tony kind of overcoming his kind of obstacle, and I think maybe this was their way of avoiding having Tony Stark become a raging alcoholic, which is what he is in the comics. His way of dealing with his stress of near-death experiences every day basically makes him a raging alcoholic in the comic books.
Well, he was kind of a drinker to begin with.
Yeah, but I mean, he just became basically a walking...
Oh, yeah.
Drunk. Is what he was. And so I thought in that aspect it worked. I mean, it just wasn't the strongest, Marvel movie. But, I still think it's okay, though.
Yeah, it has its good points, and...
And I liked the Mandarin twist, for the record. I thought that was pretty cool, because you didn't see it coming. and honestly, whatever. Like I said, I'm not a purist. I'm okay for trying something new, and I thought that had a little bit of a working to it. I was just kind of more disappointed that the twist also involved that extremist stuff. The fireball people.
I know a lot of people were disappointed too. War Machine wasn't
Iron
really,
Patriot?
Yeah, wasn't really a part of this. It was Iron Patriot, and I don't know. I was okay with him the way he was.
It was kind of one of those things with, like I said, when your main story is Tony and dealing with his personal issues, Rhodey, or Iron, we're talking about his military friend, for those who don't know, who wears the other suit called War Machine or Iron Patriot, as he's called in this movie. It was hard for him to fit in to, fighting next to him, but I think that's where we can hope that he'll show up in Age of Ultron, because I think they're going to need everybody they can get to help fight Ultron. So, that's something to look forward to, too. I think Don Cheadle, who plays that character, will be back, and I'm sure he'll be in a suit in Age of Ultron.
I'm sure if, Robert Downey Jr. will be back, he'll be back at some point.
Yeah, I would guess. Well, let's move on. So we got Tony. They kind of had this Tony story, him dealing with his battle in New York, and him just being kind of a one-suit guy again, so to speak, with Iron Man. Let's move into Thor Dark World.
Yay.
Okay, yeah. Dakota, weaknesses.
Oh, good lord. Where to start? Let's see. Well, honestly, this one really didn't have much of a story. I think was the big problem. I mean, there's the initial part of the start of the movie where it takes place thousands and thousands of years ago, where you get to see some Asgardian on elf action with this massive battle, which actually looked pretty cool.
Yeah, the battle didn't look okay. You know, that was one of the things they were kind of building up in this movie coming out. Like, we're gonna give you what you've wanted, which is like the kind of Braveheart Spartacus battles. And honestly, because they said it that way, I ended up being a little disappointed that it wasn't quite as grandiose as they were making it sound.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was. I think it was more like Lord of the Rings inspired, really, the battles anyway.
Yeah,
On a
in Thor: The Dark World's defense, though, I thought everything looked a little more real in Thor: Dark World than Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings sometimes looks pretty CGI, whereas
Yeah.
in Thor: Dark World, to its advantage and in its defense, they must use a lot of practical effects because I thought a lot of things looked pretty real in those fights. I mean, obviously, they're always going to digitally fix up things. It goes without saying, but
I think it was because it was smaller too. I mean, you don't have like thousands upon thousands of
yeah,
people killing each other.
that is true. You don't have like an entire country of orcs fighting an entire country of men and elves, which is basically what Lord of the Rings was. So yeah, I guess there was that. It just and so in that aspect, yeah, it wasn't quite as epic as they were acting like it was gonna be, but it did look real, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. The dark elves on the other hand, kind of creepy. Was I the only one that thought that?
No, they're definitely creepy, and again, I mean, kudos to the makeup people. I mean, they looked pretty cool. The dark elves, they were just a very underused villain.
Yeah. These definitely aren't the Legolas type of elves, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're basically, if you like we were saying, the storyline of Thor: Dark World is kind of tricky. But if you want to look at, okay, we'll just say that the Dark Elves were the villain of the movie, which is
Mostly true.
mostly true. That's what you're led to believe. They're Dark Elves, and they originally had the world as like a world of darkness, and they lived in the darkness, and they liked it. But what happened was they were basically defeated and sent off, and then we have the world we know today with light and things like that, and they're basically back for their revenge and to take the world back and put it into darkness again. Is basically the gist.
Yeah.
And the leader of these Dark Elves, his name is Malekith, and he's played by, I believe, the Ninth Doctor.
Yep.
And so if you're a Doctor Who fan, Malekith is actually how do you say his name?
Christopher Eccleston?
Yeah, Eccleston, however you say it. ECC, something or other. Yeah, it's like Eccleston, but wow. Hunga Schmidt! I did not swear. That was Schmidt. I thought he was good. He was just underused.
Yeah, I do kind of feel bad for the guy, too, because he spent how many hours in makeup and...
1 million. I know. I think he said 1 million. But you're right. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you spend how many hours in the makeup chair, and then it's like, you get the end product, and you're like, what the heck? Was I even in this movie?
You gotta wonder how that played. I mean, Loki, a lot of screen time is spent on Loki. It's almost like they want you to forget the fact that he's pretty much responsible for the destruction of New York.
Okay, here's my thing with Loki. People fell in love with Tom Hiddleston Loki after the Thor movie, the first Thor movie. I guess I didn't so much. I mean, I thought he was fine. Don't get me wrong. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston were the best things about the Thor movie. Even though, the Thor movies are always the most problematic in my opinion. And not because of the magic aspect, it's just that their stories are always just kind of like, I don't know. But I didn't have this, instant Loki love. And then, in Avengers, to me he was kind of more of really a pawn of the bigger picture. you know, because of the fact that you kind of see Thanos is kind of the one kind of pushing things from out in outer space, which he shows up again in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, one thing that kind of puts me off about him is he's kind of a brat.
Well, and that's the thing, like, he's the... Loki is the god of mischief, and that's Norse mythology, but then that's also how Marvel Comics uses him.
Yeah.
And he's never really that mischievous.
Yeah,
he does his little, like, ooh, that's not really me, I'm over here, stuff. But,
his tricks aren't the way you would expect or hope.
Yeah, he doesn't feel as tricky as he should be, And that was the thing. In Thor the Dark World, he finally was more mischievous.
Yeah.
And more of a trickster. But the problem was...
He stole the movie.
is you're totally thrown off. Because you're like, well, I thought Malekith was the villain, but they're really using Loki to be who Loki really is supposed to be, and now it feels like, even though Loki was helping Thor at times, basically for revenge on their mother, for what happened to her, it's just like, he's pretty much the villain otherwise in that movie, so to speak, because he's doing what Loki does best. And I just feel like Malekith got lost, and then the movie ended up being a very strange under 2-hour movie, because that movie wasn't even 2 hours long. And the thing is in a certain sense, Thor Dark World is okay. I mean, you can watch it again, and it's fine. But
it doesn't really, sucker you in and bring you in, and
you don't really get excited.
Yeah, you don't really get invested in the story. It's just like, oh, it's these two crazy kids trying to meet up across galaxies.
And that's the thing, like, we're telling you the whole plot, and all the things we talked about are the overall plot, and yet Thor's love interest really only hardly play... I mean, she's in it a lot, but as far as main overarching story, she doesn't play a huge part in anything other than she's what helps Thor keep his tie to Earth, or Midgard, as he calls it. And that was my flaw with the first Thor movie too, is like there's this supporting cast that don't really seem to matter. Especially the Darcy. Get rid of Darcy, this annoying girl that's in both of them, the Kat Dennings or whatever her name is.
I don't think they can. She honestly brings little touches of comedy to moments that would otherwise be just boring and dull.
Yeah, but then the thing is like, I almost would rather be boring and dull, because...
The same could be said of Stellan Skarsgård character, though.
Well, then that's the thing with him, too, is like...
With his crazy running around nakedness.
They made him just totally just idiotic in Thor Dark World, and I think some of it is his brainwashing that happened in the Avengers maybe is supposed to have made him a little kookier now. I'm guessing is maybe what we're supposed to think.
Yeah, I think
He's kind of obsessive with... Now that he knows Thor is real and stuff, he's kind of more obsessive about figuring it all out, and I think it just kind of made him kooky too.
Yeah, they do kind of mention that the brainwashing thing sent him off his rocker, but it almost... You could almost get rid of his character and it would still be the same story.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the Thor's movies' problems. Is Natalie Portman barely matters, and she's his main love interest. And then, like I said, Darcy could die, and nothing would change. Literally nothing.
Fans across the globe would be just completely in disarray.
Yeah, because we're all fans of Two Broke Girls, which is a TV show she's in.
Oh, you're not?
I'm one of those weird people that doesn't watch anything on CBS. It's not true. I guess I watch Persons of Interest. But that's because I love Jim Caviezel. That's a whole other podcast, though. Anyway, so Thor the Dark World. I mean, I guess if you like the Avengers movies, watch it. But it really doesn't have any play in any of the big picture stuff. So it's really just a movie you watch if you like...
The sad thing is the end credit scene doesn't even set anything up. It introduces... Oh, what's his name? The caretaker?
Oh, it sets up the Guardians of the Galaxy collector.
Yeah, the collector.
The collector, the place that, if you've seen Guardians, the place they go to where he has all the things in the glass cases. The after credits is he takes something to his collection from them. So
yes, and it's kind of interesting considering the actor that plays him is nothing like that in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
He speaks in a very weird way. I don't even know how to describe it, and his mannerisms are really eccentric. Whereas in Guardians of the Galaxy, somewhat normal, really.
Well, he still keeps that eccentricness, because he said he was kind of playing it as if he were, like, Liberace, is what he called. He kind of made himself dress and kind of act like Liberace, where everything's kind of flamboyant about him, and so he just kind of came across as kooky. Any other thoughts on Thor: Dark World, Dakota?
None whatsoever.
It was a movie, and honestly, here's the thing. I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I think he's a really good Thor.
I just wish they would, like, move on from... I mean, sure, he's in love with this girl, but could we just move on from their storyline?
Yeah, they just need... Yeah, you're right. That's the thing. They just need to do something more with him, because she ends up really not mattering. They don't make her matter. There's nothing that should be making her matter. I don't know. It's just kind of like, yeah, maybe it would. Those movies could be better if they just move on from her. Anyway, let's move into
the big one.
Let's move into the next one. This was so Iron Man 3, we talked about how that was a May movie, and then Marvel started trying something different. They had Thor: Dark World come out in November, which is getting to be a pretty big box office month. Actually, it seems like. Like Hunger Games started coming out in November. Harry Potter had a few November releases with theirs. Some of these franchises decide to use November a little bit now, which is interesting. I think they just try to beat that Christmas rush, and they don't want it to be a summer movie.
I think they're just trying to spread the love around, honestly.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, because it's getting summer's getting pretty congested.
Oh, yeah. When you have, like, a $100 million movie come out every week, I mean...
Yeah,
that's not really a good idea.
It's crazy. $100 million is like a new normal budget for movies. I mean, it's like movies that aren't even super huge that are coming out in February.
Yeah,
will cost $120 million. That's crazy.
Plus, putting it in the summer. Honestly, it's like you're gambling when you put a movie in the summer. It's like
because if you're not big, you basically have maybe that one weekend to really try to shine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously you're not gonna stay on top for very long if you are at that.
That's true. Yeah.
Unless you're Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean it wouldn't be surprising if what else comes out in May, like Tomorrowland and
Mad Max.
That's right. Mad Max comes out and Avengers: Age of Ultron will have a few weeks that'll probably definitely hold the top, and it's hard to believe that Mad Max will take it out of the top. I think Mad Max will make a lot of money, but it's also rated R.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell for selling tickets. You don't always sell as many tickets just because of the demographic loss.
Yeah, unless you have a lot of people jonesing for a little bit of nostalgia from the 80s.
Yeah, well, and also there's a lot of Tom Hardy people out there. I don't know what they call themselves.
The Hardy Boys?
The Hardy Boys? Well, hopefully they're not all boys. That'd be kind of weird. I love Tom Hardy. There's a lot of people who love him, so they're going to go to his stuff, too, I guess. So maybe, that'll play into it a little bit, too.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, there are a lot of fans of the Mad Max movies. I mean...
Yeah. Regardless of how you feel about Mel Gibson now, even.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it kind of kicked him to the curb.
Yeah, everybody kind of kicked him to the curb. I still think he's a good actor and stuff, but he's definitely been, what's the word, ostracized?
Almost like...
From Hollywood.
Almost like blacklisted in a way.
Yeah, he's kind of like a modern day communist, where we don't like you, so nobody's gonna be able to use you anymore, and then he's just kind of crazy anyway.
The moral of the story is don't insult the Jews.
Well, That was the one that got blown up. He just had kind of a mental breakdown. Anyway, we're very much digressing. So we were talking about these movies. They started having to come out at different times. You had Thor in November, and now our next one, Captain America, Winter Soldier, the sequel, Captain America movie, came out in April. Dakota, how'd you feel about that one?
I actually thought it was pretty good. Not the most action packed out of the movies.
Yeah, maybe just go into your weaknesses. We'll start with weaknesses like we have been. Would that be one of your big ones? It's not as...
I wouldn't say it was one of the biggest issues. The biggest issue with it was probably pacing. Just, it's like, oh, we're, raiding a ship full of pirates. Next thing you know, we're standing around talking about threats to tomorrow. That seemed to be their big thing, worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, and putting up these helicarriers, which seem just insanely over-equipped, if you really think about it.
Winter Soldier was really the beginning of Kevin Feige. Kind of basically, he's the guy who's been spearheading all these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. He's a Marvel guy. He basically, one of his new ideas is, let's have kind of the fact that these are comic book movies take a little bit of a back seat, and he first and foremost made this one kind of a political thriller, just like Guardians of the Galaxy kind of made first and foremost, kind of a space opera, so to speak, like a Star Wars type thing. And so that was the thing, like, basically Winter Soldier is basically first and foremost a political thriller. So in that aspect, would you say it worked, or do you still think it was maybe a little...
I would say it did, but it wasn't as suspenseful as they kind of made it out to be. I mean, a movie that got thrown around when the filmmakers of this one were being interviewed was Day of the Jackal.
Well, I heard 3 Days to the Condor.
Yeah, 3 Days of the... Which, didn't that also star Robert Redford?
Yes. And that was the thing, like, Captain America Winter Soldier, it took place over 3 days, and it was basically the same idea where he was basically on the run because everyone was trying to find him, and basically he became a enemy of the government to a certain degree because of the fact that, I don't know how you want to say it, he didn't agree with their tactics, so to speak, and so they were just going to kind of take him out.
One thing that I did think was cool with this is there's a scene in the movie that's actually straight out of a comic I read, and it was Captain America, the Civil War comic. It's where he's in the elevator, he thinks he's getting taken somewhere else, realizes that he's actually being taken into custody.
That scene was pretty sweet in the movie, I gotta say.
Yeah. And next thing you know, it's him against, 12 guys?
Yeah, they just keep, every floor it stops at, more guys get in. And then I love how in the movie he's like, wouldn't even like to get off before we start? And then they just start beating on him. And then, yeah, that was the moment when I thought the movie did pick up in its suspense.
Oh yeah, right there.
Yeah, that would be like, boom, here we go.
Yeah, especially him trying to get away from the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters on that motorcycle.
Yeah.
was pretty intense. I don't know, that whole him being hunted thing, I didn't really feel like I don't know, maybe it was the way it was set up, but it didn't really feel like he was on the run for his life, Like, some people are looking for me. Okay, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends now.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I thought, for the most part, the movie worked. My biggest thing was, as I get how they're like, well, this was, just supposed to take place over 3 days, and, it's kind of more of an internal affairs type situation. But the whole time you're kind of going, seriously, Tony Stark wouldn't know about this and show up and, like... I mean, I know Tony and Captain have their differences, but at this point, you'd think if Tony Stark heard about this, he'd be like, he has respect for Captain America, even though he makes fun of him and calls him Spangly Pants, or whatever he calls him.
Or you think at the very least Hawkeye...
Or even Hawkeye.
Hawkeye would have showed up to help Scarlet. to help Black Widow.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's a relationship between Black Widow. I mean, are we supposed to assume maybe Hawkeye's like in Argentina doing something for Shield or something? I don't know. I get that why Thor couldn't be there, but you'd think Iron Man would have at least showed up. I don't know. That was kind of weird to me, but otherwise, I thought the movie. If I just look at this movie, I thought it was pretty good. I thought what it really did a good job doing is what eventually is going to happen with the next Captain America, especially, is this is a movie that really sets up just Steve Rogers, that's Captain America's real name, having kind of a mistrust for the government in their tactics. When he sees that they're going to do this helicarrier program, he's like, well, this isn't protection, this is fear. You're just scaring people and things like that. And he just kind of ended up having a mistrust of the government, which is why I think, where they're going with this Civil War thing is he's going to be a proponent of superheroes having to register with the government, just because I think this movie helped really set up his mistrust for the government. Do you think it works in that?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say it did.
And I think maybe, in a sense, that's what they were going for, was his story arc of what'll happen in Civil War, which will be the Superhero Registration Act.
Yeah.
And he'll be the guy who's against it.
Yeah.
The leader of the people that are against it anyway. And then it sounds like, they're going to follow the comic book line where then Iron Man will be the one for. That's what it sounds like they're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know the story of why he's for it in the comic. I'm not sure how they're gonna develop it in film, but it'll certainly be worth seeing. Another thing to note too is when that Civil War storyline was going on,
yeah,
a lot of other big name Marvel heroes actually weren't really around. Like Hulk, at that point in time they shipped Hulk off to another planet.
Okay.
Thor was dead, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them were missing. Other ones were present, but not really.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see which superheroes they decide to bring into that, because I would think for sure Captain America Civil War is going to have at least some cameos of other superheroes, even if they're not big roles in it, just because of what that storyline entails,
Yeah, I'm sure by then all these other Marvel TV shows will be out, and you'll have some cameos by them.
Yeah.
Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Daredevil.
That's true, because I think they're kind of maybe planning on bringing some of those Netflix TV people in to the mix at some point anyway.
Maybe they'll pull out of the middle of nowhere Ghost Rider. Who knows?
Yeah. Oh boy.
There's the one we haven't seen in a while.
Oh, for good reason. I guess just as a way to look at what I found interesting about all these movies after Avengers and then up until Age of Ultron is that these movies almost really had little to nothing to do with what's going to end up having in Age of Ultron, except that Age of Ultron is just going to be them having to come together again for something really big,
Yeah,
they did a few post-credit scenes. Winter Soldier had the post-credit scene that involved Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, which in the new trailers is the speedy guy and the girl who shoots little red waves out of her fingers. They tied some of them in.
I almost prefer that they're standalone movies, though, so that way it's not like, oh, I have to go see what's going on in this movie now.
Oh, I'm definitely with you there. I guess I was just kind of surprised how it's a total contrast of everything before Avengers. Where everything before Avengers, maybe with the disregard of Hulk, they all were very oriented on building to the Avengers. They always had Coulson and Fury showing up at significant times leading to that. Whereas these didn't so much. I mean, yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. was in Winter Soldier, but it wasn't really a building to Age of Ultron story. So, I just thought that was interesting. And so, it'll just find it interesting to see, this is where we're seeing their standalone stories, and that's where they're coming from now, coming into this, is kind of what's going on, where it seems like Tony's got more of a handle on his PTSD. I guess we're not sure about the Hulk.
Yeah.
And Black Widow, I'm guessing...
Captain America, definitely more authoritative this time around.
Yeah, he's definitely gained authority. In fact, they even had Nick Fury in Winter Soldier say something like, I guess you're calling the shots now, or he says something like that. Yeah. And it was almost like, was the moment when you realize, here's where Captain America is taking over.
Yeah, he's not
more the leader.
He's not the soldier on the front lines anymore. He's actually calling the shots.
Yeah, he's a captain who's kind of a general in a certain sense. And so, it was just kind of, so it'll just be kind of fun, I think, just to see them coming back together in that aspect of it, where, and then with Thor, I mean, I like Thor in the Avengers. It'll be nice having him part of the team again. But in terms of his standalone movies, they're okay.
Honestly,
they're just not my favorites.
One thing I'm looking forward to is kind of just Hawkeye. I mean, he's the one person that's been missing.
Yeah, and
from all these movies.
And I've been hearing some early reports of people who've seen it that he does play a more significant role in this. Well, I would guess so, since basically the first movie's brainwashed, 3/4 of the movie? So
yeah, he's not actually a good guy until, like, the last hour.
Well, yeah, he's a good guy just under a spell, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so, it'll be nice to see him have more of a role. It's kind of interesting how he gets to be an Avenger when really he has absolutely no superhero powers, so to speak. But neither does Black Widow. He's really good at aiming. So there you go. Kind of like another Marvel character, but a villain, Bullseye. They're just really good at aiming things. So yeah, it'll just be fun. So I don't know. Hopefully you guys are excited about Avengers: Age of Ultron. I encourage you to check out. They're releasing way too many scenes from Avengers, but if you just want to get a taste to see if you want to see what it tastes like, just watch the first trailer, not the teaser, but just the first trailer. It'll just give you a taste of what the movie's gonna be, and won't just give you every single spoiler scene in the movie like Marvel has tendency to do too much. So definitely check that out. And May 1st that comes out. We're excited for it. We're excited to tell you how we feel about it in the next less than 2 weeks now. So
yep, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they play this one out.
Yeah, it should be fun. Everything just seems to be leading toward this is going to be a good one. It should just be a good solid movie. They got Joss Whedon back, who seems to know what he's doing. I mean, obviously he's just the director, and other people have to do their things right too. But he seemed to have been a pretty good creative lead in this Marvel world so far. So yeah, we'll see what he does with this one. So I think we'll wrap up the show. Thanks for tuning in. This is Steven.
And this is Dakota. And just remember, never trust a beautiful woman, especially one who's interested in you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.